Hello everyone, and this is our new video. Today we're gonna talk about online event that is taking place. Actually, I thought they kinda got dead after pandemic and stuff like that, and COVID and all the stuff. But actually, there is a chess.com event, Champions Chess Tour, where there are some tournaments throughout the year. And right now in the quarterfinals, we have a very interesting match between Magnus Carlsen and Ian Nepomniachtchi, which is really tricky with a lot of interesting games, and we'll try to analyze the most interesting from them. What's the format? Players play rapid, 4 games. You need to score 2.5 to win the match, and then go further in the bracket. And if you lose, you go to the loser bracket, so not all the chances are lost. If the result is 2-2, then both players play Armageddon. And first game finished in a draw, nothing interesting, so we're not gonna take a look at it. Second game was full of events. Magnus Carlsen play white pieces, d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, g3. Catalan that Magnus plays with success sometimes. As I remember against Nepomniachtchi, he also won a game in the World Championship match in Catalan. Right here, dc, bishop c2, c5. Super solid option. Normally idea is to play knight c6 and after, let's say, castle, dc, trade. I mean, trade a lot of pieces and white will have a little bit of pressure, but position is equal. Magnus plays not the main move, queen a4, which kind of challenging actually. I mean, it makes sense winning the pawn back. There are plenty of moves, knight d7, bishop d7, knight c6 is not really great, but also playable. Maybe it's even fine. Don't know. Just yeah, I play myself a little bit differently. Bishop d7, one of the main moves. b5, also one of the critical ideas. Yeah, it opens up the diagonal, but black relying on activity. And right here, the best move was knight a6, trying to defend the pawn. Later on, rook can go on c8 with the tempo for the queen, but Nepo plays knight c6. Magnus picks up a pawn, knight b4. Right now, queen is attacked, and we probably cannot hold this pawn anymore. So there was a choice where to go. Probably queen b3 was the best one because later we can develop our pieces pretty freely. Magnus decided to go queen d2, which is a little bit weird place to go. It makes sense, plus we keep an eye on this knight, which is kind of nice. But yeah, the move looks a bit unusual. Right here, black has a threat of bishop f2 and knight e4, so white plays knight e5, counter-attacking the rook on e8. A rook goes here, knight c3, fine development move. Bishop d4, a really interesting trap that after queen d4, there is a knight c2 with an idea to have this royal fork. Magnus, of course, doesn't fall for it. He gets the bishop pair. He goes castle, castle, knight e4, moving the knight away from the pressure. And right here, Nepo went wrong because the most obvious move, knight e4, and it was kind of correct because after bishop takes e4, it seems like bishop pair. White will develop eventually, but actually after f5, there are some problems in front of Magnus Carlsen because if he goes bishop g2, for example, then knight c2, and the position looks very disturbing. Or, for example, bishop b1 is also an option, but bishop here does not belong, honestly speaking, and position around equal, but for white, not so easy to untie. I mean, probably possible without big problems, but I mean, initially and instantly, it's not easy to see. Knight c2 was played in the game, allowing Magnus to take. Right now the bishop cannot take back, therefore it ruins the structure around the king. Never do it, please, because you don't want to have your king absolutely open. Rook b1, and Magnus started pressuring his opponent using bishop pair in open position. Jan tries to defend, playing f5 to stop any bishop e4 ideas. It doesn't stop Magnus because he wants to open up the position as much as he could. Right here he decided not to take because yeah, the queen is hanging, so we cannot ruin the structure. Queen h5 takes, bishop takes e4, f5 was played, nobody wants to get mated, and right here Magnus playing really nicely. He decides to give up his bishop pair and rely on activity, because if he went back, for example bishop g2, then there is a queen f7, then there is knight d4, potentially knight d2, and knight is on the outpost, so he takes here instantly. Bishop g5 winning the rook. Unfortunately, not winning that because there is a cool move, queen e8, offering a queen trade, and the rook is invincible. Rook d1 was played, going back, here, takes, rook e1. And right now white has clear advantage because black's king is not really safe. There is a hole on e5 and there is a weak pawn on e6, and Nepomniachtchi plays super passively rook e8. He of course needed to go for activity, which isn't obvious, but the idea is that after bishop e5, rook e8, we must play f4 to defend the bishop, and apparently the king is weak. Which is pretty annoying. By the way, if you wondered why not queen e5 to trade pieces, there is a very nasty discovered check. So pawn takes, and then after it's hard to hide from checks. Going to h3 also a bit risky because of this idea. Activity always is the key when you have strategically worse position. But not in Jan's case, probably bishop e5, creating a blockade and trading minor pieces. Right now, rook c7 is the threat, creating the pressure on the 7th rank. Queen f6, we don't want to trade. The move is actually fine, don't know why Chess.com is swearing. And right here, Magnus plays before. This move is already a bit inaccurate, which allows queen b2 and Jan right now get his activity. Instead, Magnus could play b3, and then after queen here the pawn on b4 not hanging anymore, and after queen a2 we have wonderful move rook c8 followed by queen h5, and this is GG for this king most likely. In the game before was played, queen b2, queen f4, Magnus defends everything, Jan decides not to take the pawn because of probably queen h6, followed by different attacking maneuvers, h4 creating queen g5, h6, rook c8, rook goes behind, and right here, already hard to defend for Jan, he's down 2 minutes, to 2 minutes, and Magnus started pressing him, and right here, a weird thing happened because pawn is hanging, Magnus wins it, so he's one pawn up. Magnus has 1 minute and 16 seconds, and Magnus plays rook c3. Obvious move that comes to mind is of course queen b5, and everybody can object right here and say, okay, fg, our king is in danger, what are we gonna do? That's the end. But we have the saving queen d3 check, and actually Magnus wins. Don't know what confused him, maybe he didn't see it, maybe something else disturbed him, but this was the win. Like, I don't know. Engine says it's a win. I was like looking at this game like, why didn't he take it? But probably something really bothered world champion. Uh, so yeah, rook c3 was played, e4, and right here Magnus decided to trade queens to make sure that he's safe, and this is all transformed to this position where Magnus, despite the fact being 2 pawns up, because they are doubled, it's very hard to win, especially when you play against Nepomniachtchi, and he defended super easily, and because of like Philidor position and stuff like that, it's impossible to make progress. Magnus tried, but of course it ended in a draw. Interesting game. Next one gonna be even more interesting, which kinda gave me idea for this video, and that's the moment when Jan plays white. In the first game that I didn't show, it was Sicilian. Right here it's also Sicilian, but this time it's a dragon variation, and not only dragon, accelerated dragon, which I prefer more than usual dragon, because usual dragon you like lose very often, get under attack. Right here black has dynamics, which is sufficient to get interesting good positions, almost equalizing in lots of lines. D4, CD, knight d4, bishop g7, bishop e3. This all been played many times. Bishop c4 was played. After some d6, f3, it will be transition to normal dragon. And there are two main moves, which is castle, which is highly popular nowadays, and queen a5, which is also possible, also solid take, but castle is more common, with an idea later after bishop b3 to play d5. There have been plenty of games in this position, pretty sharp line. Yeah, a lot of games, but right here Magnus choosing queen a5, and as you can notice, there is the pin, the pawn is hanging, so what's logical to do? Of course, go away from the pin, which is the main move, and after castling, bishop b3, white usually play h3, trying to create the pressure on the e-file, which is about to be open if black takes on d5. But right here, Jan, after thinking for more than a minute, plays f3, and this is actually not a bad move. but step in the wrong direction, because right here white already not fighting for a win because Magnus plays queen b4, and the move seems not very dangerous because okay, he attacked the pawn, he attacked the bishop, bishop b3, voila, everything is working. But why is it question mark? And that's because this is a children or childish trap in the dragon. I actually have been caught when I was like 9, 10 years old in a similar way, because here comes knight e4, and it turns out that right now this knight is attacked, and because of the pin white just got worse position, white one pawn down, and only with a many precise move white can stay alive right here. So I don't know, was it a plan, was it a bait, was it a bluff, what Nepomniachtchi was thinking. I couldn't find any like interviews after the game, probably my bad, but still. And don't know, maybe he mixed something up. The best move actually in the position is knight b5. There is also knight c6, but it's boring. Knight b5 is way more entertaining. Going for a fork, so we can take queen c4, and then after knight c7, king d8, knight takes a8. Black has an extra, white has an extra exchange, but knight is trapped on a8, and after a4, bishop b7 takes king c8. We got the position, which according to the engine equal, according to material, rook and two pawns for two pieces, and because it's a middle game, it's gonna be easier to play with two pieces, even though there is some chances for an attack, but I don't think it's really serious. Instead, bishop b3 was played. Magnus takes knight e4, probably thinking this is a gift. Knight takes, bishop takes, king is not castled, and this knight is invincible, because if, let's say, capture here, there is a check winning the queen in the position. And Nepomniachtchi plays rook e1, which is the best move in the position. And here Magnus had a dilemma whether it's worth taking on b3 and then trying to win queen back, having extra pawn in the end, or let's say going castle and risking all of it much, because after king f1, knight c5, bishop d4 position very complex. Magnus of course decided to choose safe option, going like this, and here Nepomniachtchi plays very well. After knight d1, he's not taking the pawn, not taking the knight, being two pawns down, he actually takes the pawn on a7, forcing Magnus to take. And right now, despite the fact that Magnus up a piece, this piece is about to be dead. And actually, it's opposite color bishop endgame. In the middle game, activity matters. In the endgame, also activity matters, but extra pawn very often is not enough to win, and that's exactly what happened in the game. Right here, Magnus had an opportunity to fight for an advantage. Probably he could play bishop f5, trying to hope for bishop c2, later try to bring the king somewhere in the center, defend the pawn, and try somehow to advance on the king side, because right here, let's say after bishop b6, we might have some chances, and activity may be not that good if let's say pawns going too much and white being too obsessed with an attack. Actually, black can find some activity. Still, it's drawish, but it was better than what happened in the game, because it's bishop b6, rook d8 is the threat, and without the rooks, it's like super easy draw. The game went on, but it's not interesting, entertaining, or something like that. So yeah, really funny trap. I don't know if like it was some genius preparation or it was just mixing up some lines. Have no idea, but yeah. Actually, again, how this trap actually looks like in the initial view. Normally here, people play something like f3 right here, or maybe not right here. Yeah, something like that. Then castle, then bishop c4, and then right here, queen b6 being played, and after bishop b3, that's how I got trapped when I was like 10 or 9, knight d4, which is also not lost completely for white, but it's very hard to continue. So okay, let's go to the next game. And here, it's the last game, because the score is 1.5 for 1.5, and Magnus right here decided to have fun. He plays such with English opening. Idea is to prevent bishop b4, which is kind of common right here, because it's, let's say, e3, bishop b4, or g3. Bishop b4 is also the move. So he goes a3, g6, e4. Looks like Nepomniachtchi knows everything. White has a juicy hole over there. And Magnus plays g3, saying I don't care, and probably h3 was the best move right here, because then after all these captures, I don't like the structures for white, honestly speaking, but it was better in the game bishop g2. White played, and here there was a very good move in Alpha Zero style, which is h5, followed by h4 and h3, and white can barely stop it because of the pin. And if, let's say, white plays h4 himself, then this bishop stands here for ages, and after h3, bishop takes, there is a nasty move h4, trying to damage the pawn structure, and in case of g4, this pawn placement speaks for itself, and especially holes on the dark squares also look outrageous. But Jan plays more natural. He tries to occupy the outpost, going for a super typical replacement for many openings. This is like classical idea from probably many strategic books. He goes a5, Magnus plays rook b1, and Magnus really playing with the fire. He goes bishop g4 instead of just castling and trying to, somehow slowly equalize. He's going all in, because after bishop takes e6, knight e6, he's unstoppable. Going h5, and when you're king in the center, please don't push your flanked pawns unless you Magnus Carlsen, or at least, I don't know, GM. Because after f5, f4 is a real threat. King in the center not feeling safe. Magnus say, I don't care, continue attacking, and trade here, spicing up the position as much as he can. And trade here, Nepomniachtchi made a mistake, because he goes for fe, trading minor pieces, but if he played queen e8, it would almost guarantee him winning the match. Of course, you might say, okay, you exaggerate, nothing terrible happened yet, but actually it did happen, because in this position, strategically, just white is cooked, because if queens get traded, there are too many holes, black's piece is extremely active, and white is in huge trouble. Don't know what stopped Nepo from doing it, probably because he spent only 45 seconds is his best traditions, not thinking properly enough. And after queen e6, hg, Magnus started playing for a win already, probably, even though right here Nepo had his chance. He could take ef, because for white taking this pawn is a suicide due to different checks, forks, and so on. And after simple rook b2, there is annoying rook f6, trying to double up the rooks, winning the pawn, pressing and pressing position of white. But after rook f6, queen goes to h3, rook f8, rook b2 defending second rank, rook takes, knight d5 takes. Right here it was already Magnus' turn to show his skill and think. He had 3 minutes on the clock, and he decided to go for easy target, which was the pawn on c7. In fact, he needed to prevent counterplay, because if Magnus managed to win this pawn, not allowing counterplay, as it would happen if we take rook takes, and the queen will crawl somewhere on c1, which can be annoying, he could have played rook e2, preparing great idea to play knight e3 and knight f5. After it, we got wonderful knight versus terrible bishop, taking the pawn position strategically amazing. Instead, Magnus went for tactics. Nepo finds his counterplay. Right now, queen f3 the check looks scary, rook f3 looks scary. Of course, Magnus takes the pawn, and actually it all leads to the position where Magnus one pawn down, but because his knight is way stronger than the bishop, it's sufficient to finish the game in a draw. They played for a little bit, but the game ended with a threefold repetition. And here comes the Armageddon. I don't know what is the time control. Couldn't really find information. As I understand, 10 minutes against 7 or 7.5. Magnus decided to choose black pieces, because making a draw with black pieces looks kinda easier task than playing for a win with white, even though because of, let's say, before all the games ended in a draw, even though both of the players had real opportunities to win their games in some moment. And let's see the last game. Magnus plays black pieces. Jan decides to try English opening that Magnus has just tried, not very successfully in my opinion. And right here is the same setup, only Nepo plays e3. The main move right here is bishop b4, which leads to very interesting positions after queen c2. If bishop takes, some systems involve bishop queen takes c3. Some systems even go for bc e4 and going for g3, which I like more for white. But right here, Magnus plays d5, and I understand the logic uh, of this move. Actually, it's pretty bad. In my opinion, I wouldn't want to play it for black, but Magnus wanted to hold a draw, and I'm just gonna show it just in a moment. I played such position reversed when I was younger, kind of with white pieces right here, but without extra tempo with bishop b5. It would be a very famous variation of the Sicilian, and this important tempo kind of helps a lot for white, in my opinion. But Magnus takes knight c3, bc, bishop d6, d4, and Magnus plays queen f6. Idea of this line is that Magnus provoking Jan, playing d, bishop takes, knight takes, takes, bishop takes, takes, and after this come to this position, where it's again opposite color bishops, and black actually has more active queen, so white most likely have to trade it, and most likely Magnus will make a draw quite easily, even if he goes like this. Uh, as black, I wouldn't want to suffer in such position, but Magnus has enough skill, and probably he definitely knew for sure that he can hold it. That's the reason why Nepo didn't go for it. d5 looks appealing, and that's what Nepo played, but this is a delusion that will win the piece because of the spin due to a6 move. And right now, if bishop a4, there is a b5 move. And even though we can win the pawn in this way, playing against the bishop pair plus these two pawns is the same as this one, it's not really an advantage. And d5 I don't like. Probably Nepo needed to go for this setup because it's the only fighting option right here. He decided to go for another position, which wasn't the greatest decision of him, because right now there is a huge hole on c5, and Magnus plays this position. This position is really amazing when there are holes, when there is like this long, slow strategic play. Castle knight d7, knight d2 must have been played because this knight needs improvement. He can create a lot of pressure, and instead Nepo plays c4, reinforcing the structure, which is kind of strategic mistake because right here after c4 it's hard to find the plan, and you will see later what happened in the game. So I don't need to explain it myself because the game will show it perfectly. After knight d2, let's say knight c5, there is a bishop a3 move. We can play knight c4. We can create some pressure. Our piece is not stuck. Our knight is flexible. Instead, after c4, despite the fact that center is very secure now, it doesn't help white because white standing here. Where should white play? King side, dangerous because the king might be open. Queen side, how can we do it if there is a blockade? When black clearly can play both on the king side, queen side, especially f5 can be the break. King h1 was played going away from the spin. And right here, if let's say Magnus plays the most natural move, placing the pawns on the dark squares, making blockade even worse for white, and let's say later playing some bishop d7, maybe knight a4, maybe going rook e8 and preparing f5 later, it would shut through the center and give a lot of good open files and placement for his pieces. But as we could see from previous games, Magnus wasn't in the mood to play quite strategical, and even though he needed just to make a draw, he decided to go all in. He goes bishop f5 so far, nothing terrible. Rook c1, b6, also very logical. f3, bishop d7, moving away from e4 threat. And right now, again, he can play, let's say, knight a4, he can play rook e8, or he can combine it all together. And then after rook e8, play f5 when it's time, or before play rook e8 and play f5. He decides to go f5 straight away, and maybe he misses the next move that Jan played, which was great move f4, right on spot. But what's about to come next is a real massacre. Because right here, there are very big problems in front of Magnus. He cannot take ef because there is e5 and pawn structure is amazing. And if, let's say, we take this way, which is the best way according to the engine, it's very spooky. I mean, it's really, really scary to play with against such center. Even though engine gives some advantage for black, I myself would be scared as hell because it's like super tough position to play against such strong middle. But Magnus decided, I don't know what was in his mind, because what he played on the next move, I'm just speechless. He plays rook e8, reinforcing the center. Engine starts screaming like, what are you doing? What are you doing? He just played a 4. Look at this. You're gonna lose an exchange, Magnus say. I don't care. Queen h6. He sacrificed this exchange, saying that my activity will right now pay off and I have great pressure. And after fe, it looks like after bishop e5 there is no compensation. Magnus here plays rook e5, sacrificing second rook in the position, which is like incredible, because right now after taken we already have mate in threat. If not taken, the pawn falls, so Jan was forced to take. Here Jan defends knight f3, which is the best move, and defend and attack, and Magnus plays bishop f4, retaining the pressure. And right here engine gives like plus 1.5, plus 2, depending how deep you go, but it's very complex. There is only one relatively simple way which Jan could have found, but this is really great challenge, and Magnus really showing amazing dynamical skills, as if like some Kasparov or Tal playing. Because right now the best move was g3 and not e5 as Jan played in the game. It looks absolutely dumb because you're like giving up the pawn. Taking an exchange we're not even discussing, because then it's an extra exchange, and this is like when you have too much extra material, you can sacrifice some material to still have an advantage. So after g3, bishop takes g3, we can play e5 first, not rook c2, sorry I'm messing up, and then play rook c2, and right now all second rank is guarded very reliably, and this is it. Magnus would be cooked, but Jan plays natural e5 move, spending as usual 20 seconds in this super important position without realizing what danger is about to come. He receives knight e4 almost instantly. Right here he already thought for a minute and made the final blunder of the game, because rook c2 still retained an advantage. I don't know where he was rushing. If he found rook c2, the position would be more or less alright, because after this mating nets, attacks, white staying alive somehow, magically, but still. And black has compensation, obviously, everything is not that bad, but white in the game. Instead, queen e1 happens, knight comes to g3 with the check, we cannot take it because of the pin. King goes towards the middle, knight f1, rook is hanging, so we cannot take because we will be down a piece. e6, bishop e8, rook c3, knight h2, and here how Magnus wins this match. Great performance. It wasn't smooth. Again, Magnus could easily lose in the game number 4. Right here, he went absolutely nuts and could play way more strategically and winning in this way. But I mean, here he definitely entertained all the viewers. I'm pretty sure if I watched it live, I would also be quite surprised and really enjoy this game. And I hope you can enjoy all the games that I picked up for today's video. Like and subscribe if you liked it and want to support our channel, and comment if you think that I mean, some games were more interesting, which game you liked more. Any activity would be appreciated, and see you in all next episodes. Goodbye.